Right now, I just want to give you a brief overview of kind of how borrowing and lending works in a very, very basic sense. Your book goes into far greater detail with regard to the type of financial institutions and so forth, and it's pretty clearly spelled out in the book what the makeup of these markets are, how these financial institutions trade stocks, bonds, etc., and the flow of these funds from one institution to another. Having said that, I just want to give you a brief outline, give you a gist of really how financial institutions make money, and in particular banks, and how they interact with the saver, in other words us, how they interact with us to make money, and how that results in building a market for loanable funds. Again, this is just a very brief exposition just to get you familiar with the concept of there being a loanable funds market, which in a subsequent video you'll see modeled, actually modeled graphically. We can think of a lending market in a very basic sense as two components. So you have savers, okay, and you have borrowers, okay. Now, the savers lend money to the borrowers. Now, we don't lend money directly to borrowers. The savers put money into the bank, so to speak. Okay, now again, this is a very basic sense. I'm just keeping it on the kind of us level, not getting deeper into bonds and so on and so forth, which the book explains very well, but just in a very basic level. So think of you get a paycheck at the end of the week. You consume some of that paycheck and you save some of that paycheck. The amount you save goes into the bank. Well, we tend to want to think banks make money hand over fist by charging us overdraft fees and things like that, but they actually don't. The way they make money is by taking our saving and lending it out to borrowers. Okay, and what they do is they pay us, say, an interest rate on our saving of say 1.5%. Okay, and then they lend it out to a borrower, say at 3.5%, and the bank keeps the difference. Okay. Now, when interest rates go up, savers have an incentive to save more money because they can make more money in their saving account. Well, when they do that, then banks, the saver deposits more money out of their paycheck into the bank, when now the bank is sitting on more money. Okay, so now what they have more money now they can lend out to borrowers. Well, in order to make it more attractive to borrowers, holding constant the demand for these loanable funds, in order to make it more attractive to borrowers, obviously they're going to probably have to adjust the interest rate, possibly downward, in order to get rid of that extra cash. Okay, now if savers aren't saving as much money, okay, for whatever reason, say the interest rates are low, then savings accounts become depleted. When savings accounts become depleted, then the banks don't have as much cash to lend to borrowers, and what they do then is they'll actually increase the interest rate in order to decrease the amount of money borrowers want, okay, to reduce a borrower's incentive from borrowing money. So that's pretty much how everything works in a nutshell. It's actually quite simple. especially on this very basic level that I've shown it. Nothing real complicated. Again, we get a paycheck, we consume some of that paycheck, we save some of that paycheck. What we save goes into the bank. The bank doesn't make any money by sitting on that cash. They lend that cash out to borrowers at a higher interest rate, and they pocket the difference, okay, between what they pay us on our saving account and what they lend to borrowers. Think about somebody buying a car. So assume I save $20,000. Bank now has $20,000 to lend out. Somebody comes in, wants to buy a car for $20,000. Well, the bank pays me 1.5% on that $20,000. And then they take that money and lend it out to somebody who wants to buy a car at 3.5%. Well, they keep the difference, okay? And again, as the amount of saving fluctuates up and down, that's going to change the amount of money that banks have to lend out. And then that's in order for banks then to change the incentive of borrowers. If the banks are sitting on a lot of money, they need to increase the incentive for borrowers to borrow more, so they'll lower the interest rate. If banks aren't sitting on a lot of money, but there's a lot of borrowers out there, they'll increase the interest rates to reduce the incentive to borrowers to borrow money. Okay, and that's how that funds market works. That's how savers and borrowers interact through this intermediary we call bank.